Howdy, mister. Are you fellas some kind of posse? I don't like posse. Take some of that gun violence. I became famous in Northwest Missouri in 2012. Made a lot of people mad.
Got a bunch of zombies trapped at the other side of this tube.
I hope all the young witches have learned how to properly bake children.
This video marks the third in an ongoing series I like to call Nobody Lolcows. These are of course Lolcows you've never heard of, thus the name. And in today's Nobody Lolcow, we will be talking about a guy that goes by Double-Ot Sean on YouTube, who is not only a gun instructor, but also one of the most hated gun instructors in the state of Missouri, a state that I'm from. But before we get into the Lolcow of the day, allow me to first say thank you to the Subscribe Star members for providing me what would normally appear like just regular tea, but is really Long Island iced tea. How does this? There you go. Yeah, whatever. So who is Sean Harper, aka Double-Ot Sean? Well, according to his Twitter account, he is a progressive Republican, and trust me, we'll be getting more into that later.
I'm a Republican.
But also on top of that, he is a gun instructor from, as I said, northern Missouri. Here's the thing. I am also from Missouri, but I'm from southern Missouri. And the thing is, you have to understand, those of you that aren't from Missouri, there is a cultural difference between those from the south of Missouri and those from the north of Missouri. The difference is about as stark as the difference between the north and south during the Civil War. It's a very, very large gap of cultural differences. And this will be further demonstrated, I think, as we progress through the video. Ultimately, though, one thing I want to point out that Sean Harper really likes to do, because I like to start off with the positive things, all right? So the first thing I want to mention here is that Sean Harper occasionally likes to have fun, and on Halloween, he likes to LARP on YouTube.
I'm out hunting zombies. Happy Halloween!
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, aside from the weird direction, the interesting direction he seems to be pointing that firearm and firing it, there's absolutely nothing wrong with what I just saw. However, we'll get into his safety and his opinions on it a little bit later in the video. But first, what we need to talk about is what is with this progressive Republican bit, right? Well, I guess we could start with he's anti-Trump.
Vote for me. Anybody but Trump in 24. Please remember, anybody but Trump in 24.
I am so thankful and sarcastic that we have the Trump cult headquarters here in Northwest Missouri.
I'm not criticizing him for his political alignment or his reasoning for why he may or may not vote for Donald Trump. I don't particularly give a shit. The only point that I want to make with that is that I fail to understand what the fuck that has anything to do with the Midwest best firearms instructor. Yeah, that's what he named his channel. Whatever. And while we're on the subject of firearms and instructing people on how to use them, I fail to understand exactly how the fuck abortion and whether or not it should be legal has anything to do with that at all.
This message is for all the diehard patriots. You believe very strongly in the Second Amendment, and so do I. I also believe in freedom. Women's freedom to choose. Don't you dare try to infringe on women's rights.
And at risk of branching off into an arbitrarily related side tangent, I gotta say that people that aren't from Missouri tend to have a bit of a culture shock when they get here. And not just Missouri, but also much of the Midwest entirely. And what I mean by that is primarily edginess. Edginess is something that is synonymous with almost the entirety of the state. Regardless of whether or not you grew up in the North or the South, edginess seems to be something that is, again, pretty synonymous with living here in Missouri. And what I mean by edginess is not like, ooh, I'm gonna kill myself and listen to emo music. No, what I'm talking about is using ironic or really absurd hyperbole to make a point. This guy in particular, who I forgot to mention earlier, is 62 years old. He also tries to be edgy, but it comes off a little, dated.
I hope all the young witches have learned how to properly bake children. 350 degrees, 5 hours, Cooking time may vary according to the child's size.
Now, I know for a lot of you people watching, you probably looked at that and thought the same thing that I did, that I see what he was trying to do there, but it just didn't land. It just wasn't funny. Now, at the end of the day, though, there are also a lot of people that watch that and have absolutely no idea what the fuck they just saw. And what they just saw was a guy using extreme hyperbole, absurdist hyperbole, in order to appeal to those that agree with him about abortion and whether or not it should be legal, while simultaneously triggering everybody that was watching that was against the thing that he is advocating for. That is the entire point of edginess. That is what edginess is, and unfortunately in his particular case, it just doesn't land very well. And you see, I get that a lot of you might also be thinking that I'm beating a dead horse at this point. I get it, but the whole reason I'm pointing this out is because he uses his edginess, or at least his attempted edginess, to, well, advocate for other policies that actually are gun related, and one of those is gun reform.
We need common sense gun reform now. A person should be 21 years old to buy a badass PTR Model 91, 20 rounds of 308. 21 to buy a gun. The people who want to argue about the terminology gun violence have probably never read the owner's manual to their gun. They're just loud, obnoxious Second Amendment zealots that think everything is gun control. They're going to take our guns and force us to accept the New World Order. 10-shot 12 gauge. A person must be 21 to purchase a firearm.
By every casual definition of the word, he is what you would call a gun nut. Despite him being a gun nut and being a firearms instructor and all that shit, he is going on and on and on about being 21 to buy a gun. Even if you have the law 21 to buy a gun, that's not going to stop somebody from buying a gun. And at the end of the day, though, I don't think it really matters, because the truth is, his reasoning for that law isn't exactly rational.
Gun violence is caused by gun madness, and gun madness is caused by our culture. Violence. Shoot 'em up and kill 'em video games. Lock up your guns. Don't let them get stolen. Criminals don't care about gun laws. They steal guns. When a child finds a loaded gun, they'll pick it up, point it, and pull the trigger. Even if it takes both little trigger fingers.
If the fear is children getting a hold of these firearms and effectively stealing them, or anybody stealing them for that matter, if that is really the fear that you're concerned about, how is making 21 to buy a gun in any way, shape, or form going to solve that? And on top of that, trying to suggest in any way, shape, or form that Democrats aren't intending to take away guns, I think is pretty insane.
There are a lot of stupid, obnoxious people who think gun reform means some kind of gun control. The Democrats are coming for the guns. Yeah, all the other claims in the past 50 years were false flag events. Bill Clinton took all my guns in 93. Obama took all my guns in 2009 and 2013. Joe Biden's too busy trying to get reelected in 24. He ain't coming for the guns. That lie was made up by Harlan Carter, the president of the NRA in 1973. The Republicans paid him off, and that stupid lie and that silly myth has persisted for all this time. Stupid people still believe it and still say it out loud.
It's not just Democrats and it's not just Republicans, and Republicans may do a little bit less when it comes to trying to take away guns. Democrats do overtly attempt to do so. I mean, fuck, Biden attempted to do so relatively fucking recently. Donald Trump was also one of the biggest pushers in red flag laws, which is a pretty major violation of the Second Amendment. Even Ronald Reagan passed some pretty fucking hardcore anti-gun legislation. I'm trying to tell you something nobody else is gonna fucking tell you. Nobody in power likes you, the civilian, to be armed. And for this man, a gun instructor, to tell you that there should be less armed people, I find that to be a bit bothersome, to say the least. And now that we're back on the subject of him being a gun instructor, let's talk about gun safety for a minute. One of the issues I have with this guy is he seems to be shooting in very interesting directions.
You need to have the attitude, knowledge, and skills to safely own and use a gun. I don't favor mandatory training, but some people probably need it. The gun violence hashtag triggers people.
what is he shooting at? If this was anybody else, if it was some like weird alcoholic redneck shooting guns arbitrarily in the air, I wouldn't be like that bothered by it, honestly. And the reason I wouldn't be that bothered by it is because, well, they're not firearms instructors. The key thing that firearm instructors teach is gun safety. That's like half the reason that people go to fucking firearms instructors in the first place, other than getting a piece of paper that they take to the fucking county sheriff to get their fucking CCW. This motherfucker doesn't really seem to give two almighty fucks about gun safety. So much so that he even refutes the entire discussion, the further discussion on gun safety as a whole by giving really fucking bad advice.
All guns are always loaded until you're certain that they're not.
No, you should always assume that a firearm is loaded. You should always treat a firearm as loaded, even when you know it's not.
Never point your firearm at anything you're not willing to destroy. Treat all firearms as though they're loaded, even when you know they're not. Keep your finger off the trigger until your sights are on target. Be sure of your target and what's beyond it. Pretty straightforward.
Speaking of basic rules of gun safety, he even disagrees with the 4 basic rules of gun safety.
Dozens of knuckleheads have tried to rewrite the gun safety rules, and thousands of knuckleheads spew this ridiculous nonsense so they can pretend they know what they're talking about. The 3 original gun safety rules are: always keep the muzzle pointed in a safe direction. Always keep your finger off of the trigger until you're ready to fire. Always keep your guns unloaded until ready for use. These are the 3 basic primary gun safety rules to safely own and use a gun.
To give some good faith here, what he's quoting is the NRA's guidelines or standard on gun safety. However, I disagree with it entirely. I think the last rule in that, to always keep your gun unloaded until ready to use, is fucking stupid. And the fact that the NRA refuses to even acknowledge the 4th rule as outlined by the NSSF, I think is wholly irresponsible. In fact, I think that's fucking insane. And yes, I know, we're getting a bit into the weeds on the whole gun safety bit, but realistically, it doesn't fucking matter what he says about this. What I'm about to point out here, in my personal opinion, is the end-all be-all problem with Sean Harper and his firearms instruction course. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's listen to what he has to say first.
I became famous in Northwest Missouri in 2012. I held a concealed carry class. 105 people came on a Tuesday. Made a lot of people mad. Greedy instructors. Made a lot of people happy. I also pissed off the Democrat sheriff. I'm a Republican. Some of the Democrats went and complained to the Highway Patrol Station about my First Amendment right. That didn't work. They complained to the Attorney General. Sean Harper said something I didn't like at his concealed carry class. But I was afraid to speak up because he might not give me my certificate. Yeah, $50 for the certificate, half price. I made a lot of people mad.
So I looked into it, and what did I find? Well, what I found was that Sean Harper is the absolute worst gun instructor in the entire fucking state of Missouri. He is actually, well, at least as of 2014, the most hated fucking gun instructor by the perspective of at least, 5 county sheriffs? Now, why is that? Well, one of the reasons why, and I know this won't come as a shock to any of you, gun safety. Yeah, that's right. Gun safety. If it's just you and this target at 7 yards, and you don't have it arched in any particular direction, and you're just fucking plinking at a fucking straight piece of metal, the statistical odds of really any of that shrapnel coming specifically your direction is pretty fucking low. In fact, it's not zero, but it's pretty fucking close. But whenever you have 100+ fucking people all lined up shooting at 7 yards at targets that aren't angled in any particular direction, you see, that poses a bit of a mathematical risk if you think about it for a minute. It's a pretty fucking big problem, especially since it was, like, I don't know, illegal at the time. Now, of course, I'm going to link these articles down below if you're really interested in reading them, but needless to say, because of this embarrassment, he actually changed the name of his company to, you know, Midwest Best Firearms Instructor, and the rest is history.
I have 2 camera phones that died of a bullet wound.